Welcome in to the 27th episode of The Ivy, as I'm Thomas and I'll be here with you for the next 40 to 45 minutes or so to dive into everything Cubs related. If you like the Cubs, you've come to the right place, and I'm extremely grateful once again that you took some time out of your busy schedule to join me here on Sunday night, or whether you're listening to the replay, heading to work, or whatever. I appreciate it. Alright, well tonight we're going to be touching on these last couple series versus the Giants and the Brewers. Both of those were on the road, and both of them the same result, as the Cubs lost the first two games of the series and then won the finale, avoiding the sweep, as it could have been worse, but it also wasn't very good. Along with some trade talk, we'll talk about who the Cubs may be looking at. Theo and the front office has been very active and engaged from what we've heard out of reports from Chicago recently, the last day or so, especially with how the bullpen has faltered. And then we'll also look at the NL Central. Obviously, the Cardinals are tied with us in first. That's a big move that we've seen the last couple weeks. The Cardinals have gotten very hot. This is something I said a few weeks ago that I still thought it was anyone's division. I joined, Theo on the Ivy. Not the Ivy, Cubby Den a couple weeks ago, and I said that he asked me in a would you rather question if at the end or with a month to play, would you rather have a 4-game lead in the division automatic or be where you are right now? And the Cubs were up, I think, by 3 games at that point. And I said I'd said 4 at the beginning of the month just because any team could get hot, and especially with the way the Cubs were playing, kind of up and down, inconsistent baseball. We've seen that continue the last couple series. And all of a sudden, obviously the Pirates have gone pretty cold, and besides this last series for Milwaukee, they haven't played very well either. But the Cardinals have played really well. I think they're like 8-2 in their last 10. I know they dropped the series to Houston this weekend, 2-3, but still playing good baseball. And obviously we have the off day tomorrow before the road series in St. Louis, Tuesday through Thursday. For the Cubs and the Cards, which will be the biggest series of the season so far for both teams. As, like I said before, we share the division lead ahead of Milwaukee by 1 game, who's in third place. Obviously, Pittsburgh, and I think they got swept against the Mets this weekend. I think the Reds may have beaten the Rockies in their series, but the Reds have fallen to their sellers now at the deadline as well. We'll get into all that later. But I wanted to just kind of preface the podcast with that because a lot has changed in the scenery of the Central, along with where the Cubs think they stand. I think there's a lot of pressure all of a sudden. We started so good out of the second half in these last couple series, minus a few pitches. They haven't been that bad when you look at starting pitching and a couple games from the bullpen, yeah. But the offense really hasn't done anything the last couple of series, and I think that's a bigger issue. And I think that, with the Cubs being more engaged into trade talks, that could actually possibly mean a potential, a big bat to come in here, shake this lineup up. And I think that I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't necessarily a bullpen move. Anyways, let's get into this last series, a couple series ago against the Giants on the road. And also, by the way, I'm struggling with a cold. My nose has been stuffy all day, so I apologize for sniffling. But anyways, let's get into it. The first game of the series, this was the one that Pedro Strop blew. The Cubs were winning this game 3-0 after their 4th inning at bats. In the second inning, this was the Robel Garcia homer into the Bay in San Fran in right field. So that was his 4th of the season. And then Kyle Schwarber, who hit another 2 homers today and the first 7 RBI for the Cubs, he hit his 22nd of the season in the 3rd inning to make it a 2-0 game. And let's see here. Alec Mills made this start. He was good through 4, but in the 5th, he kind of got roughed up, and he actually left the game. He got chased out in the 5th, only finishing with 4 1/3 innings. one walk. He did give up 7 hits. And the Giants cut the deficit to just 1 run after 5 innings. So the Cubs went into the 8th with a 3-2 lead, and they actually got a really big insurance run. Anthony Rizzo had RBI doubled. I believe that was a 2-out rally for the Cubs. Chris Bryant got on. He stole a base. I think it was his 3rd or 4th of the season. And then Rizzo knocked him in with an RBI double. However, Pedro Strop, he did give up the first run with just 1 out, but there was only a runner on first base. 2 outs. We're up a run in the 8th against the Giants. We're not a very good hitting team. Yeah, I get they've been hot, but still. And he gives up back-to-back 2-out RBI doubles. The last one, obviously, being the go-ahead and eventually game-winning run, as Strop gave up all 3 in that inning. And just, oh my gosh, it's his 5th blown save of the year. He also got the loss as the Cubs dropped to 2-4, or he dropped to 2-4 in the season, I should say. And it just stung, this one. Obviously, we only had 6 hits, which isn't going to cut it. And we saw that continue in the next, 5 games with the lack of hitting. But, I mean, it was just such a terrible Game 1 loss. Let's look at the next game. This was on, let's see here, Tuesday, I believe. And in this one, the Cubs, yet again, they lost in late innings. However, it was a little bit different in this one, as the Cubs actually were down 4-2 after 4 innings. Yu Darvish wasn't that good. However, he did finish 6 innings. But like I said, he gave up 4 runs, 6 hits. He did strike out 6. But facing Bumgarner, I actually thought Darvish would do better in this game than Bumgarner. I thought he would outpitch him. Turns out Bumgarner did the opposite. He didn't do amazing, but pretty dang good. 7 innings, 3 earned runs, 6 hits, and he also struck out 7. But later on, the Cubs actually were able to tie this one up. Victor Caratini's 7th inning RBI single cut the deficit to just a run, as Jay Hay scored to make it a 3-4 game. And then Jay Hay had an RBI single with 2 outs, very clutch RBI single in the 8th to make it 4-4. And then this was the game that we also, in extras, from the 10th through the 13th, so 4 innings of at-bats, we sent the minimum of 12 batters to the plate. I remember writing that in my post-game for this one. So, that's not going to cut it when you're not even putting any pressure on the Giants' bats. And eventually, in the 13th, and the bullpen was so good, too. The bullpen, I think it was, let's see here. So not Alec Mills, but Darvish went 6. So yeah, the bullpen threw 6+ innings, scoreless. That included Steve Cishek, Tim Collins, Brandon Kinsler, Rowan Wick, Kimbrel, and then Brad Brock gave up the game-winning walk-off homer to Pablo Sandoval on honestly a pitch that wasn't that bad. It was a low ball, I think, honestly, down by Sandoval's knees, and he hit it to the opposite field and just got out. So, I mean, you can't really be mad. This game came down more to the offense for me, more than, an unlucky homer, especially because Brock had a strong inning the inning before that. So that came in the 13th, and all of a sudden, after 2 games in which he thought were winnable, I mean, obviously this one we had to come back, but for sure game 1, all of a sudden, much like the Brewers series too, we're down 2 games, and it's just so frustrating knowing that you're so close in both those games, and it's not that necessarily anyone did terrible, minus Strop in game 1. But the offense just wasn't there. But it's not like both starters blew up or anything. And like I said again, that we saw that trend continue. However, the trend did not continue for at least the the finale against the Giants. It did come back in the first 2 games against Milwaukee. But much like today, the Cubs won the finale, avoided the sweep. And this was an odd game. Tyler Chatwood got the spot start after John Lester was scratched with an illness. We actually saw that illness come into play last night, which I think costed the Cubs the win. I think we'll get into that later on. But anyways, Chatwood, he went 4 innings. He only gave up 1 run, had 5 strikeouts. I don't think he was necessarily all stretched out for this start. We saw him go 68 pitches. I know that he hasn't started in a while, so you necessarily didn't think he could throw like 80 or 85. But, 4 innings, 1 run, you would have thought maybe another inning. Anyways, the bullpen was great. They didn't give up a run the rest of the way. So you can't really blame Joe for making that move. They threw 5 scoreless, including Kyle Ryan with an 8 2/3, 3 strikeouts, only 1 walk. And then Strop did throw a scoreless 7th, so that was good to see. However, obviously we know what happened a couple nights ago with that. And then Brandon Kinsler earned his 12th hole of the season, and Kimbrel shut it down for a 7th save. So that was the pitching for the Cubs. How they got it done offensively, Javier Baez hit a solo homer in the first. That was off Tyler Beatty. And that was his 25th of the year. And then Chris Bryant hit a 2-run homer before actually exiting this game with right knee soreness. However, right after the game, Bryant said he'd be ready for Friday against Milwaukee, and he was in the lineup. And he has definitely been one of our more consistent guys amid the troubles. When you look at it, the last 7 games, not including today, though, Chris Bryant with a team-leading 320 average for guys that are, they go for the stat, like they apply for the stat. They have a certain amount of plate appearances. I don't know what the word is. I'm blanking. Anyways, among players that are worthy of the stat, I really don't know the word. Bryant led the Cubs with a 320 average. He also does lead the team in the last week, though, with 12 strikeouts. But we've seen a couple doubles, a team leading 4 RBI along with Rizzo. So amid the troubles, Chris Bryant has been there all along. We know his crazy numbers this year that have kind of been downplayed. His OPS is way up there with the best of them. He hit his 21st of the season, make it 2-0. And then Alberto Mora hit an absolute laser for his 10th of the season. He also had the late inning heroics last night, but Kimbrel blew that one. Almora with his 10th of the year, and that was it for scoring after the 4th. As like I said, the Giants didn't put on a run after the 3rd inning, thanks to Stephen Vogt's RBI single off Chatwood, as the bullpen dominated. All right, so then we had an off day last Thursday, and so let's get into Friday's game. This was the Pedro Strop blown game. We all know what happened, but let's break it down here as it starts with David Bodie's 6th inning 2-run homer. That was a go-ahead 2-run shot, his 10th of the season. It was a 0-0 game. Kyle Hendricks had 5 scoreless with 2 hits and no earned runs and 5 strikeouts, topping off at 90 pitches. Kyle Ryan, Steve Cishek were pretty good. Cishek did walk a couple batters, but then Kinsler gave up a RBI single to Christian Yelich to make it a 2-1 game. And then the next inning in the 8th, Pedro Strop was brought in and just, obviously his last outing was the 4-1 victory a couple days before in the finale against the Giants, in which he bounced back from blowing the game, game 1. But when you look at it, he did not look good in this one. Pedro Strop, honestly, I think that it's about time for him to go. I just think that we could package him into a deal because he's still a good pitcher. The other thing I think, though, is that Joe Maddon is to blame for Strop's recent struggles as well, because when you look at it, he keeps bringing in Strop in the 8th when we have like a 1-2 run lead. Yet we still have guys like Brandon Kinsler, Kyle Ryan's been dominating, Rowan Wick even has been better than Pedro Strop. Yet day in and day out,